every single thing has a frequency.
Linda, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really a delight, actually, because we've been working on getting it set up.
Yes, and we had a nice conversation a little while ago. For context, anyone listening in, I met Linda's team at the Health Optimization Summit and then again at the Biohacking Conference here in Austin, Texas, earlier this year. Your booth was one of the more busy booths out of the whole event. And so I figured there was something worth looking into there. And it wasn't until about 2 months ago that I started testing out your frequency device and your frequency technology. And we'll go on into that in a second. But how did you get to where you are?
With developing the product, you mean?
Yeah, with developing the product and your interest in this whole realm.
Well, so basically, I should start at my birth then. I was born deaf in one ear, and they actually didn't discover it until the 3rd grade. So I was evidently really in tune to sounds and, trying to make my way through a world when I was half deaf and somehow fooling everybody, So I've always been fascinated by frequencies. And then I think probably the biggest thing, I did a little bit of music, played some different musical instruments when I was in middle school and high school. But then when I started college, I started playing the drums. And I continued to play drums with a band for 35 years. And it was all about sound. I didn't even know it. It just fit me. But for some reason, the sound of those drums was really what I needed to maybe set my emotions or balance me or whatever. So those are ways that I was really connected to sound for a long time.
Wow. And then where did you start looking at this as more of a therapeutic tool?
Well, I had the idea in about 2007, I believe, to do this. And it really jumped up in my need to get something developed when both my mother and sister developed breast cancer about 6 months apart. And my doctors actually just suggested that I do a double mastectomy and forget about it, just go on with my life. Although they hadn't done any tests and I didn't have any cancer, they wanted me to be preventive. So a lot of women get that story, and I just could not handle that. So I quit my teaching job, and I started studying all kinds of holistic health and things that I could do to help myself to prevent and protect rather than having surgeries. And so I started a business called BRAS, Breast Research Awareness and Support. So that's pretty graphic there. That tells you everything you need to know. And so I have worked with women's breast health for about the last 18 years and taught women, how to protect themselves. But at the start of that, it was immediately obvious to me that there were so many things that cause problems with breast cancer that I could be selling women supplements all day long and teaching them things. And it was just an overload and not the path I wanted to go. So, just be simplistic, I'm going, God, tell me what to do. And the answer just came back to me, frequencies, so that's where I got my original idea, was to use frequencies. And then as I started studying them more and more, there was a frequency for every single idea. Everything has a frequency. So even though it was new to me that women would come in and they would have 8 teeth that could be connected to their breast problems, they're 2 up and 2 down on each side, that could be draining into their breasts and causing problems. We're never told that, I found a frequency for that, though. We also have E. coli that's now connected with breast cancer. I found a frequency for that. We have emotions that cause breast cancer and breast problems, and I found frequencies for those. And the list goes on and on. Detoxification, there's hundreds of chemicals that cause our problems. And I should not just be talking about breast health, because obviously so many other things are connected to our chemicals and our plastics and our inability to detoxify. So the simplest thing I found for all of these problems was frequencies. And actually the cheapest. That's a good way to say it too. So I wanted a tool that I could develop that would cover as many ideas as possible because I could kind of see into the future. This was again in 2007. And I could see that somebody would be developing a tool for this and a tool for that and a tool for that. And of course, that's really what happened. There are tools for a lot of things, and they might have one or two frequencies on them, where my tool has 1,100 different frequency sets, 150 some frequency ideas, and 24,000 frequencies altogether. So I powered it up. I loaded it up.
Yeah. I think what's interesting here is that a lot of different like modalities and schools of thought and everything, they come at issues from obviously different perspectives. You have like the Chinese medicine perspective with meridians, and then you have like the German new medicine and like trauma and like the way that shapes like manifestations of disease, and like across all these different systems. And you have like the Western system that's primarily biochemical imbalances. But like what you're saying is that underneath all of those is an issue or an imbalance or something to do with frequency.
Definitely.
So let's now rewind a little bit for people who have never heard of frequency medicine or even the idea of frequencies. How would you describe what they are?
Well, it's a law of the universe, basically. The law of vibration. Every single thing has a frequency, and they have been able to measure them. So a lot of the original measurements came in about the 1900s, and Nikola Tesla was involved in this, so I love it. And I think one of his best ideas that I talk about is the mortal oscillation rate. And so he phrased this, and he said that everything, when it meets a resonant frequency or a frequency that's just the same, that's what that means, resonance, the same identical frequency. When those frequencies meet, that they will actually, combine and self-amplify and then destruct or fall apart or blow up or however you'd like to say it. So that was his phrasing to tell us that frequencies could be very helpful for many different pathogens. And, so that was one way. So that's why we seem to have, I should start that over. It seems as a nation, as a world, even more than that we've gone the way of medicine. We have forgotten how easy frequencies are. And we went the opposite way. So we don't know anything about frequencies today in our generation, and how everything has a frequency, everything has a resonant frequency that can, be changed. And the list goes on, because that's kind of been not in our wheelhouse. We do not understand frequencies when, the law of vibration is one of the most important things in the universe.
Mm-hmm. So I can see, coming at this from a couple different perspectives, if you have something you don't want in the body, say a pathogen, hitting it with the right frequency, the resonant frequency in which it dies or explodes or whatever you want to call it, that could be helpful in that case. But like, what if the body is already healthy or doesn't have an imbalance of certain microbes or pathogens that you don't want? Like if you're already in a decent state of health without any of those overgrowths, would you still want to apply frequency? Because you wouldn't want to explode a healthy body.
Right. And so that's why there are frequencies for everything. So they have frequencies for better, very specific ideas that I had no idea about. I mean, honestly, there's books this thick with frequencies, for everything under the sun. So frequencies, I can see, can be change various things. So in women, which is, kind of my forte with their breast health, when I was working on the prototype, I had 9 women had breast lumps go away in about 30 minutes. So we had frequencies to detoxify the lymph nodes, whatever was breaking down, whether it was calcifications or whatever, we were able to see that frequencies could change that and, clean something out in just a short period of time. So frequencies can do more than just work with pathogens. They seem to be able to rebalance, to realign, to, readjust, so many different words in there that can be helpful along those lines. So another, really great story is in my testing again, I had 30 people who came into my office, and they actually had problems with kidney stones. And some of them were in pain right then, not all of them, but they wore the WavWatch for about 30 minutes for kidney stones. And voila, when we did a urine sample, now this is just my testimony. This is my little test, to see if I wanted to keep developing this product, and how important it was. Was it really working? Well, when you see 30 people have kidney stones seem to go away in about 30 minutes, you're pretty excited. So their urine samples were full of all kinds of plaque and their pain went away. So that was really exciting. So again, that was a frequency, breaking something up, not necessarily killing something, but changing it.
To underscore what you said about the breast lumps too, like the conventional wisdom is that it takes years or decades to develop those lumps, and therefore it must take years or decades for them to dissipate, to break down, if that's even possible.
Yeah. So we are just not in tune with frequencies. We've kind of went away from ancient knowledge. I think that's pretty obvious. When, if we just pay attention to that again, we know that they use sound for so many things, but the evidence is hard to find. It's a little bit, harder to catch up on, but it's there. They did use frequencies for a lot of things.
Yeah. So when you were doing your research, I'm gonna go back to the example that we keep talking about of the breast lumps. You found the frequency that causes the breast lumps to break down, and then you replay that frequency onto the body, into the body. Like, is the frequency specific to breaking down of breast lumps, or is it a frequency of like general breast health that helps return the body into like a state of homeostasis where everything that shouldn't be there goes down, everything that should be there is amplified, kind of like an adaptogenic effect? It's
kind of all of those ideas. Great question. But because that's what I discovered, I think some of our original frequencies from the 1900s were very, very specific. And what I found was that people didn't know enough about their bodies today. You don't need to have a medical degree. I didn't want people to have that in depth to be able to use this tool, a wearable tool. So I took the frequencies and put them all together in a set, is the way to say it, so that we do have frequencies to try to break up that cyst or to break up calcifications, if that's what might be in the breast lump. Then we have frequencies to dissolve it, to change it, to drain the lymph nodes, to drain the liver so that, the liver doesn't have problems. And so we put also frequencies to heal the breast. So we have a combination of ideas all put together for women. So basically they just had to touch one button and it cycled through all of those things.
Yeah, because when you have a catalog of thousands of frequencies, it's like, okay, well, there's about 25 to a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 frequencies that could be relevant in this case. How do I know which ones to apply? So it's nice that you actually combine them into a frequency set. So it's like a track you're playing, kind of like a song where you have multiple instruments. You're not just isolating one instrument out of the song and saying, this is the instrument I need, but also I kind of like all these other instruments over here. It's like, no, this is the whole composed musical piece, and it's more enjoyable, more effective when you combine them into one.
You actually explained that brilliantly, but I'm going to explain it down to earth, a little bit different way too, because I like to laugh and have fun. But I did put a set together that was called, after party support, which is, duh, everybody laughs. I can see you laughing, although people listening won't see you laughing. But what do you immediately think of? Somebody's got a hangover, so they got a headache. They need to detoxify. They might have to run to the bathroom quite a bit. Their liver's messed up, and so on. So I put all of those frequency ideas together into a frequency set so that you don't have to, So that makes it a little bit of a fun way to describe it. It's got a lot of different ideas that help you in one, overarching goal.
Yeah. So what are some of the other effects or use cases people are seeing that like go beyond what you typically could attribute to the placebo effect? Like if you have a lump in your breast and it's gone, kind of hard to placebo that in the span of 30 minutes, perhaps over a longer period. Yeah, it's possible. Not very likely, especially when you have a bunch of people with the same experience. Are there any other like anecdotes that come to mind of people having like big transformations?
It seems to me that nerves are amazing. So many people have given me testimonies on essential tremors, and then I've been able to see some also. So one gentleman came and he had essential tremors for 12 years, And he actually, I think he took the WavWatch home. It was still in the testing phases, development stages. And he videoed for me. And he said that his percent better in about an hour. And he'd had them for 25 years. So I had a before and after picture that he was able to give me. So it was totally amazing. And then those type of stories continued to pour in. Just a couple of months ago, it might have been at one of the conventions that you were at too, a lady came up and she had essential tremors. And she, put out her hands and they were just jumping and, and her sister's going, yeah, she can't even hold a glass of water. She's been that way for 3 years, do anything. So someone put the watch on her and she immediately felt something energetic go from her little finger up underneath the watch and up past her elbow, but not quite to her shoulder, I don't think. And within 3 minutes, her tremors were gone. So don't forget those stories. So I wasn't at the booth at that exact time, but she came back the next day and she's running and she's got her hands out so that I can see that they are just as steady as can be. And she's going, look, Linda, look. And so lots of excitement in that. But that continues. There are so many people who have tremors or neuropathy or numbness that give me testimonies. Another amazing testimony was a gentleman who called, just like people are listening. Somebody called me and said that they had ordered the WavWatch for their wife with Parkinson's. And then the person just kind of cleared his throat and you could tell he was embarrassed. He was trying to figure out what to say. And finally, he really blurted out again and he goes, and we sleep really close together. So I'm kind of like, okay, and what do I say next? And then he blurts out one more time and he says, well, I could feel her frequencies when she had the WavWatch on. And I got up the next morning and my feet didn't hurt. And I'm going, well, that's really neat, trying to. And he goes, oh, no, you don't understand. He said, they've hurt for 15 years. I've been on meds for 15 years.
Wow.
So this gentleman snuggled with his wife for a couple more weeks and he was off his medications.
Wow.
So I actually learned something from people like that sharing with me that they definitely were feeling the frequencies. They were sharing the frequencies, that you could touch someone who had the watch on and they would receive those frequencies also. So of course I've told this story and now I just get people calling me all the time and they say, well, that's what happens to my dog. My dog's all nervous and anxious and he comes up when I have the anxiety frequency on and he'll set up my feet or, so another story might be jump on my lap or another story was with cats. And this lady said that her 5 cats who never had anything to do with her just jumped up behind her on the couch and, around her and just cuddled for the first time when she had anxiety on the WavWatch.
So interesting. It seems that pets are more intuitive around like health optimizing practices, whether it's PEMF, which is another frequency I want to explore with you, like how it compares and contrasts, or it's grounding, or it's light therapy, or it's just like tap water versus a cleaner water. Animals seem to gravitate towards things that are going to improve their health, and they're less affected by placebo effect because they have no idea what it is. They're just doing what feels right to them.
So we actually run parasites for our dog, and we actually I have pictures of my dog wearing a WavWatch. We put 2 wristbands on her and she could, put it around her neck, but we also just lay it on top of her kennel at night, and just turn parasites on and it, will go all night long. It will circle through, repeat. And she's hearing it a little bit, but we can't hear it. It's just really a soft noise. And so we have stayed away from giving her some of the medication that we're kind of concerned about, so.
So how are these frequencies working on a cellular level? Like I know there's the healing is voltage, Jerry Tennant, I think his name is, idea where it's like cells have disrupted like resting potentials and doing certain modalities can help restore that to what's healthy. When you have like a body that's functioning decently already, is there a change in like cell charge, or is there something else going on that at like a deeper level?
Well, there can be. And this information is from Dr. Candace Pert. And this is about the 1980s, I believe. She did her research. And she said there's actually 70 different receptors in every cell and that they feel vibration. Well, again, the whole world is about vibration. And so 24 hours a day, we can feel those vibrations. And so when we are actually, working for a specific vibration, having it on our wrist and our body is absorbing it through the speaker onto the wrist, it actually starts one cell to vibrate because those 70 receptors vibrate. Then they will cause the next cell to vibrate and the next and the next. And then literally it zips through your body faster than the speed of sound, So to me, we just have so many changes that we may not even realize are going on in our body because we have so many intricate cells and the receptors behind them that most of us haven't even acknowledged, So.
Yeah, when I was studying the work of, I think his name is Luc Montagnier, he was mentioning how there's like an alternate theory paradigm beyond like the traditional lock and key mechanism of like how molecules dock onto receptors, and it's more of like a vibrational mechanism like you're describing. And like there's certain things in the body, like the sense of smell, it doesn't fit the classic paradigm. And so like that is a newer paradigm that hasn't gained as much traction as it could and should, if indeed it actually is as effective as he was claiming. But it's interesting to hear, like, here's another application that might be that specifically, like maybe working through that vibratory mechanism.
And here's another idea on it. Research from the Niels Bohr School of Physics in Denmark that's pretty specific. But you can look this up. And I tell people about it all the time because they've never heard of it, even though they are usually professionals, kind of in this energy field. And they'll look it up and they'll go, oh, my goodness. The research is pointing out to us that our nerves are not electrical. Nerves are not electrical. And that our nerves are sound pulses. So the changes that we have seen in so many people with nerves and neuropathy, numbness, that whole category is just over the top and also points to that idea. So there's a lot of research, and they say, this school and their research says that they have proven that sound is more sound pulses go through your body, not electrical go through the nerves. And I think that's really, really interesting. So that will take a long time for people to acknowledge that and for us to be able to accept that idea and maybe develop tools for that, except the WavWatch is way ahead and we're already there. And, I think I saw one time that it might take 50 years for everybody, for a whole concept, to change around. But at least at this point, this Niels Bohr School of Physics is saying our nerves are sound pulses.
So are they saying that that's like the more fundamental like communication mechanism between nerves, or are they saying that there's no such thing as the electrical impulses that are sent and it's actually sound?
Yes, that's actually what they're saying. It's not electrical, it's actually sound. And they did a lot of research. I'm not sure I can explain it very well, but they did research on anesthesia. That was their whole goal. They said that anesthesia, they still don't know how it works. And, none of the concepts are correct, but when you apply the concepts of the nerves being sound impulses, then voila, it makes sense, So that was kind of their experiment, and there's a lot more to it than what I can actually explain.
Yeah, okay. Wow. Something for me to look into.
Yes, I'm. Sometimes I can read things, but that doesn't mean I can repeat them like I want to and make them clear. So I'll let you do the research on that.
Very nice. Well, I have a watch on right now, and I'm listening to the cognitive wellness track. I will turn up the volume so people who are listening might be able to hear through the microphone. That's at full volume, but most of the time you cannot hear it. I don't hear it going about my day. How does it work? Like if I, for example, was fully deaf, would I still be able to have and capitalize on the effects of this frequency technology? Or
Yes.
Do you need to be able to hear? And like, even now when I'm wearing it, I turn the volume back down. Is it still working?
Yes, you just don't want to turn it on off, have no volume because there'd be no vibration. Your body is feeling those vibrations. It's not really, it doesn't have to hear a sound. And that was so important to me because I'm deaf, and I needed a tool that would work, obviously. For me, it was sometimes you design something for yourself and it's like, oh yeah, this was work, and think how many people have gotten deaf as they age. So I'm really glad I did take that into consideration. So no, again, your body is absorbing and basically it's pulling those frequencies, or they're moving through your bones and your skin. And again, we don't realize that. We do have bone conducting headphones now, so maybe people are a little bit more aware of it. But before that, people probably didn't realize that our skin absorbs sound and that our bones, it just zooms through our bones. So they are very big conductors of sound. And it's so important to realize, to me, how important sound is, because there's a lot of different things out there. There's light, and everything is good. But again, I settled on using sound because sound is the first thing that we are aware of in the womb. That's the first sense that we have our faculties on. So they say it's like a drum solo or, drum corps in the womb all the time with the sound that we're hearing and adjusting to. And we don't have any sense of light until what? We're born, So sound has such a head start on shaping our bodies and, our bodies reacting to sound. And then sound is the last thing that we hear usually before we pass to another world. So we have sound our whole life, 24 hours a day and night. From, I think it's about 8 weeks after inception is when we have the sound concept. So huge idea there that we can move, or that sound moves through our bodies, through our bones and our skin, not just our ears.
Yeah. Do you know, is it working through the mechanoreceptors on the skin as well? Because I know certain technologies, they have, they vibrate and it's more feelable. I notice the vibration, I feel it, and those are claimed to work through activating the mechanoreceptors, kind of like a hug does. And that's part of the reason the whole biochemical cascade of oxytocin and that type of stuff happens. I would imagine that the vibration is doing something similar.
Yes. But again, I think ours is reaching cellular level to start with, and it's starting those 70 receptors to vibrate. So most people don't feel, a shaking or a vibration, like the lady did with the hands. She felt something. And once in a while, somebody does, but it's not something that everybody feels is a vibrational feel, when they wear the WavWatch. So it is a little bit more subtle going through your cells just very, very quickly.
Yeah. So your device plays entire frequency sets. As we already mentioned, it's kind of like an orchestra. If I was to go on to YouTube and find a 432 hertz and I play that, would that be a really pared down version where it's obviously only one note in the entire orchestra? But is that the same idea? Are those the kinds of frequencies?
Yes. I think I call it a pared down one, because I mess with some of those sets, like you say, 432 energetics. 432 energetics is actually the name of my overall arching company, So I really loved 432, But as I looked more and more, I thought 432 would be in so many different frequency ideas that, again, were measured by usually Dr. Royal Raymond Rife. He measured those. He's known as the father of frequencies. And I was surprised that 432 wasn't, everywhere, because they talk about it being the frequency of the world, but it is not, and I don't know that I could just pare down and say this was the main frequency that was measured in every single health problem that they were measuring at that time. But 432 was not as popular as I thought it would be. So.
Do you ever, maybe some of your tracks already include it, but the Schumann resonance, or 7.83 hertz, is considered the Earth's heartbeat, as people call it. Do any of your tracks include that?
No, that's a really good question. It opens up a whole bunch of other ideas too. But the sounds on the WavWatch are only acoustical. They're within our hearing range. So they just go from, 20 is really stretching it, 20 hertz to 20,000. So anytime you're talking about a range, the high range and the low range, some people can hear them, some people can't. The same way with the watch, the speaker isn't as adept at doing exactly those particular frequencies. So that is below, what our ears can hear. And it does not include those lower range frequencies.
Interesting. Okay. I have a red light panel here, and one day I was measuring my brain waves, and I decided I was going to change the mode it was on and bring it up to 30 hertz, so a rapidly flickering light. And to my surprise, the red light panel all of a sudden put my brain into a gamma state, and I wasn't expecting light could actually have that effect that quickly. And since 30 hertz is in the audible range, would you be able to entrain the brain to different states using these frequencies?
Well, light frequencies, you're saying? Use the light frequencies or doing, So we do have so many frequencies that do train the brain and work with the brain because they are in that particular frequency range. They're lower, but then we also have octaves, and we have all kinds of, people who are musicians will understand. I'm a drummer. I'm not a musician, really. So I don't, but all of those different harmonies sometimes are included in different frequency measurements, again, that were derived from Rife's work.
Okay. How are you seeing people use this to get the best effects? Because I was excited when I first got it. There are so many options, even though there are full sets now. I'm like, I want to run the first aid protocol. I want to run the brain health and brain support programs. I want to run the male support programs. There's so many different options. Like, where do people begin with this type of technology?
So we kind of tell them in our little booklet to start with first wave. And that's right in the booklet. And it's, we have a big arrow pointing there and going, start here, And first wave is my idea, of the things that are the most important that maybe people do not realize in their own health and what the world has subjected us to today. That's my big take on it. So most people do not realize that Lyme disease is contagious. They're not paying attention to that. They haven't told us that. And some people don't even know about Lyme disease, and other people have been devastated by it. So one of the first things I put in first wave was Lyme disease. That's because, 15 years ago, they already had about 300 different diseases that were connected to Lyme disease. So many people have come into my office that are carrying Lyme disease and have no idea whatsoever, and they've been to doctors. So I could talk about this a whole hour. In fact, I do have 2 hours of information on Lyme disease, and the WavWatch, using the WavWatch very specifically. So that's why I put those frequencies on there. So you should play those first because that helps to clean out ideas that you may not even know you have in your body. Well, how easy is it to get Lyme disease? Well, I play Lyme disease when I'm on an airplane to protect me. Why? We're breathing everybody's air. It's recycled air, right? As far as so somebody could have Lyme disease on that plane and you might not even know it, and you could get off. And if your immune system isn't working good, it's going to settle in your system and take over. So that's why that is so important. So that's one of the first things that people should do. And it's amazing how people feel so much better and they played Lyme disease and they had no idea anything that was going on.
Do people have Herxheimer or die-off or detox reactions if, say, they have Lyme disease or any other overgrowths, and then all of a sudden they run a program, multiple programs?
I have not had tons of people call me that they've had Herxheimer reactions. I have had a couple of people, but it was embarrassing. The lady played constipation for 12 hours and then she had diarrhea. So that was her reaction, But on the Lyme disease, we have, detoxification frequencies built into that set. Again, so you don't have to go there and figure out, it's all there. So maybe that has been very helpful to minimize it. But there are so many co-infections connected with Lyme disease that I want everybody to be covered for that. I mean, the people there are whole families that have Lyme disease. I mean, I actually worked with a lady who lived in Lyme, Connecticut, where the disease was discovered, and everybody in her family had Lyme disease. Surprise, So it is contagious, very, very contagious. So that's why I even tell you that everything that's in the area that we label first wave, I don't know if you can see this here, that you should play it in, at least once a month, but maybe, once every other week, something like that as your time goes. Then the next thing that I tell people to run is parasites. Why? That's made big news lately, right? It seems like it's been out in the news more, So again, everybody has parasites. They're not paying attention. We travel around the world. We bring the world's parasites back. And that's what people aren't really realizing, We work with our dogs for parasites, but we don't take anything for parasites ourselves. How dumb are we? So that's another thing that we've missed in our general caretaking. Self-care is taking care of parasites. So I, did a little bit of testing when I was developing it, and I had a machine that would test for parasites. And out of 100 people, 42 people had parasites as their worst problem. Didn't even know it, And so I actually taught them something called muscle testing. And then they tested a homeopathic, a supplement, something that I would suggest for parasites, and we put it aside. Then they wore the WavWatch for 30 minutes. Most of them didn't feel anything, but when they retested those supplements, their body didn't need them. And then when we retested them on the biomeridian, they also didn't seem to have parasites. Now, I'd had that same machine, which it's called a biomeridian or an MSA. I'd had that machine for 15 years already, and I'd never seen that happen before. So all I can say was that was my little testing. But I did have a person who actually was a chiropractor, so it was very interesting, who went home, who, did that test for me. Then she went home and she took a picture of a foot-long parasite that she had passed. That's pretty interesting, So that's a really, really seems to be easy way to get parasites to move, to kill them, to drain them. So we have frequencies for...
On the parasite topic, it also, that's one of those areas where modern medicine says that if you live in a developed world, there's no need. Like, that's an old issue. Only in underdeveloped countries will you run into this. And it seems that people who actually work with like the general public on this type of thing, of course, there's like a sample selection bias because that's what they do. But like, it's very much an issue still in developed countries.
It definitely is. I've seen that over and over and over again. And so, there are people who have parasites that can't walk, and you get rid of the parasites and all of a sudden they're out of their wheelchair, from some knee problem or whatever it is. So when you see that over and over again, you're knowing that parasites are connected to our health. We just haven't been taught that. The medical community really doesn't have good prescriptions, quote unquote, for parasites. So of course they're not going to teach us about it or tell us about it or help us on it, Diagnoses
too. Like, it's very hard to diagnose because of the life cycle of parasites and the fact that they don't want to be excreted in the first place, and they do what they can not to be. So it's deceptively, the numbers are underinflated.
Yes, that's a big story, is parasites and all the things and the cancer connected with them. And a lot of people now have seen, somebody pull a worm out of somebody's brain, and it sticks in your mind. So then you start thinking about parasites. So again, that's why parasites are one of the first things that I tell people to play. Maybe they don't know, they think they're healthy, but it's pretty interesting when they play Lyme and they play parasites. Okay. So the next thing that
Parasites also have a heavy burden. They usually coexist with heavy metals. So does your frequency help take care of the heavy metal, I don't even know if it would be mobilization or neutralization, how that would work?
Yes, it does. And that is one of the things on the list here that I tell you to play first. And that is first wave, because we've got one more category and then we tell you to detox. Okay. So first we're trying to kill things in your body, and then we're trying to detox things. So one category specifically is heavy metals. And you're so smart on that, Nick, because when I was, first learning and working with people years ago, I gave a couple of gentlemen some actually frequency medicine, some homeopathics, and supplements for parasites. And they went home and they got all itchy, their whole body turned itchy. And so they came back, and what my machine picked up at that point in time was heavy metals. So as soon as we gave them something to clear out the heavy metals, their itchiness went away. So that was my learning experience. Oh my goodness, we have to make sure that we are detoxifying heavy metals because the parasites carry them. So it's huge. They connect with them in our body some way. So that's perfect. Yeah. So we also have detoxification for heavy metals. We have it for EMFs, which is huge. And so many people are saying that they are not as anxious, they're not having as many troubles, emotional wise, when they play the EMF detox. Doesn't that tell you something? Pretty interesting. And then the other area of detoxing is chemical, so chemical support. So very important that we cover all of those. Now, you could come back at a later time and play them individually, but when you first get the system, those are the things that I tell you to cover. And then another thing that's on this list, you can just punch the top one and it'll just play through them. You don't have to mess with them a lot. But another one is wave defense. And that's a pretty big one. As I was studying, again, back to breast health, but so many women had different kinds of pathogens that can cause breast cancer. So I've already mentioned E. coli. There's several different parasites. There's also Epstein-Barr virus. There's the cytomegalovirus. And all of these are connected with cancer. So what I did was take all of the known pathogens that cause cancer, and I put them into this particular folder right here, Wave Defense. So you should be playing that every once in a while to defend yourself against some known pathogens. Now, I used to have these listed for you to see, but the FDA didn't like that. They said I needed to have a double-blind study for every little word that I said, So I couldn't say Epstein-Barr virus necessarily. So it is in the, wave defense. So that is a defense for you against things that are known to cause that C word, But very, very important. Where do you get that? Where do you have anybody that says, hey, these things could be in your body. Let's just have a program to play every once in a while that could keep them at bay, keep them out, that kind of thing. And just a personal story on me, I was testing this idea and I was walking around the house, and all of a sudden I felt this huge stabbing sensation in my thumb and finger, kind of up to my wrist. And I'm going, and I looked on my watch, and it was actually playing through the Epstein-Barr virus. Now, it's not as plain, on my latest watch. I cannot, could not see, but I learned so that I could help you. And I'm going, well, that's interesting. I don't need Epstein-Barr virus in my body, so but the pain went away in about 8 seconds. It was just, fleeting here and there. But then the next morning I woke up and all of my arthritis was gone. And I haven't had a return. I was having some problems with arthritis in my hands and stiffness and that kind of thing. And so basically playing through 8 minutes of Epstein-Barr virus and my arthritis was gone. So I can't say that on everybody, but I do have an 8-minute frequency code for Epstein-Barr virus built into this wave defense, So everybody that plays it will get that kind of protection. And then other women in my office that played through it, they definitely felt something. One woman had already had breast cancer in both sides, which is extremely rare. And when she played the Epstein-Barr virus folder that I had put together for my prototype, she was just jumping all over, and she could feel it. And then she could feel it in both breasts. So that was pretty interesting, so that it may have cleared out something. Can't say, what's your proof? I don't know, just that her body changed and she felt something,
Yeah.
So, and then maybe I'm talking too long on this, but you asked me what could people do? Where could they start? But see, what I've tried to do is give you a tool that is helpful for the ages, for everybody, for everything. And so the last idea on here is wave relief. And sometimes it's listed at the beginning, sometimes it's listed at the end in the little booklet because we've had different prints. But wave relief is basically for, different types of pain and inflammation and trauma even, because I figured out from watching clients who were helping me experiment with it, that those three actually were huge frequencies that needed to be played a lot. So sometimes people play these and their pain goes right away on inflammation, pain, and trauma, but it is listed as wave relief. So that's a huge one. So those are the ones that I tell you to start with. If I answered your question in a long roundabout way there, Nick, sorry.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's perfect. And I'm also curious, for some of these things, you already mentioned there isn't as much of a detox effect as some of the other modalities that can hopefully get to the same endpoint of like helping with the underlying issue. But like for things like trauma, it's generally recommended to like integrate after a session that stirs up that trauma and like perhaps like invigorates it, and then to like change the context, the association, like a NLP like style reframing of it. Do you find that that kind of stuff is helpful for these types of things? Like if someone experiences an EB issue, can they just safely push through it, or should they be doing other things in conjunction with this to make sure it's not actually going to like harm them on their way out?
Well, that's a really interesting one. I do something called thermography, which is a camera system that uses, there's no pain or pressure. It's just taking pictures that show inflammation. And so the images come out in, red, yellow, blue, green, and different inflammation points or different colors in different areas of the body are what medical doctors look for, to give you some ideas about your health. And I've had several women come in who were actually told me that they had PTSD. And so you're looking at an 84-year-old woman and you're going, oh, why do you think you have PTSD? Where did you get that from? And this lady says, well, it's from my great grandchildren. I believe my clients. That's what she thought she had. She had extreme tension and pain in her head. And when I took pictures of her with the thermography, we could see that extreme pain and tension and redness. Her whole face was just inflamed. And then, more down the sides, her head and down the sides of her neck this way. So then we put the WavWatch on for that particular idea, for her emotions, for, getting rid of some of those. And I took a picture 30 minutes later and her pain was almost gone and the inflammation had changed drastically. And then she wore it 30 more minutes. And I took a third picture and it was almost all gone. And her written testimony to me was totally amazing. So no, we didn't use anything else. We just used the idea that she knew she probably had PTSD. That's great. Or somebody else might know that they have, a different problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do 2 or 3 different things with it. It seems like the emotions really work fairly easily with it. Of course, I'm always telling you that you should drink plenty of water. And then my other major thing is have lots of salt, unrefined sea salt. Those always help with frequencies. And
yes, because you're making the body more conductive. So anything you apply to it should, in theory at least, distribute throughout the body more effectively.
So you have some really great questions here, and I hope I'm answering them, because that was a great one. Because, at this point, I wouldn't have time to tell people that. That's what I was experiencing before I had the WavWatch, that I would be working with people so long to say, oh, you could do this, you could do this. Oh, here's another thing to do, and then they'd have 10 things to do, to go home and do. Well, now I can just say, okay, if you got PTSD, press that button. Or if you have, something else, press that button and just let it play. So that makes it very much easier. And that was my whole idea with developing the WavWatch, was to simplify our self-care.
I know you haven't done clinical trials because they are super expensive and difficult to administer. Have you seen any other before and after transformations? You've already mentioned a couple, but for example, on blood work from using the WavWatch, certain mode, consistently for a period of time and then retesting and seeing a certain biomarker change, or perhaps live blood analysis or HRV changes, things that people can use themselves to verify?
Yes, to all of those, and people are, they're wearing their sleep, monitors and saying, hey, this is my number now, or they're wearing their Aura ring and saying, yes, XYZ has changed. So we've had all kinds of testimonies for everything that you could think of. I'm even a little overwhelmed myself because we do have 1,100 different ideas, inside those 150 frequency sets. And at one point in time, I counted, and literally we had over 500 different types of testimonies. So yes, and you're just kind of surprised. I mean, I guess one I haven't even mentioned yet, and maybe a little bit different, but people know themselves, maybe they don't have to take a test. When people hear I'm deaf, that kind of sinks in a little bit. But I've had 7 people call me excitedly to say, Linda, I took off my hearing aid. I can hear now. Now, what kind of a test do they need for that?
Yeah.
Is that it, So
yeah, those kinds of things are pretty clear. I know you have a vision program on there as well. Have you heard any testimonies of people like using the vision program and then
several
either go ahead.
Several on cataracts, several on just clarity. I'm not wearing my glasses as much anymore. And just, some on just, they had pink eye, so a lot of different things with eyes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Nice. So as soon as I came across this, I started using it. I'm the kind of person who, once I try something, more is better, and more often is better than less often. So I would just run it pretty much all day. And now I'm wondering, is there a, first of all, minimum effective dose? And is there also a law of diminishing returns or tolerance or desensitization, where if you use it too much, you're actually going to be getting either less effect or worse effects than if you just cut it down your usage a little bit?
You asked the hardest questions there. I have used this watch for 6 years probably, and I still have new problems that come up, and I wear it, like you say, probably 24 hours a day because I have access to lots of them. I can keep them charged up and keep them on. And my body is still reacting to change. Like right now, I'm working on my gums for some reason, And so I can see some changes, that kind of thing. There is not a double-blind study on it, so I do not know definitively scientifically if that happens. But what I'm telling you, and I've kind of mentioned it in different ways before, sound is what we hear 24 hours a day, So I think that we don't have to do too much adaptation to it, that we're safe that way. Where other things, we're not supposed to be out in the light 24 hours a day, You're not supposed to do, we don't do that. That kind of thing. But we can hear things all day and all night long. So I am not very concerned about our bodies doing that. And another reason is that people play different things. There is enough of a variety that, one time they might be playing it for, joint pain, and the next time they're playing it for eye pain. Now, personally, I really haven't had an improvement in my eyesight. I can be honest and say I haven't. I've worn it for eyes, have not. I'm still wearing glasses. I wish I'd like to throw my glasses away, because I've had some people say that they did throw their glasses away, or, they don't wear them anymore. But I haven't had that. And so different people have different responses, different ideas that do happen. But I am not concerned about necessarily overwearing it. Now, people will call up and say, can I wear 2 watches? And I do say, no, I don't think I would. What's enough? Let your body kind of ease into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then if I was really wanting to focus on one particular goal, say it's the tooth health or eyes or liver, gallbladder, you name it, would I run that program once, or should I just keep looping it over and over again as much as possible?
I think that there is such so many testimonies. Some people have results within an hour. A lot of people. It's hard to believe that. I tested 30 people with the parasites, and 30 minutes, they had results. So I am of the belief that 1 to 2 hours, 3 hours is good, very in there. If you have a severe problem and you want to make sure, loop it all night long, but then give your body a break and play something else, and then maybe 4 or 5 days later, play it again. If you still have something that comes back. Now, one example is the gentleman that I mentioned that had the essential tremors, 25 years, and in about an hour, he had a 90% improvement. And that was just my prototype. People were saying, well, how long did how long did that last or whatever? And I said, well, he did call and say that he went out after 11 days and used his weed eater in his left hand, his weak hand. He's holding his weed eater, and his trembles came back. So he just played the WavWatch again, and it went away. So sometimes things we could do or doing could be, aggravating again. So of course, then you would utilize your WavWatch and try to clear that up again. But we don't have a right or a wrong to say, yes, it did clear my liver up. I do not know. But we have so many testimonies from improvement that, a little bit of that is faith, that I'm going to play this for set time to work on my liver, and then I'll come back to it at a later time,
You might not know the answer to this, Linda, but if I use this for addressing whatever condition, symptom it is, and it improves, am I addressing the root cause of the dysfunction by doing that? Or am I taking care of the symptoms? I mean, both are great, but it's nice to know if it's also like helping the underlying whatever it is.
I think it's helping the underlying, definitely. Just like the kidney stones, people can take all kinds of things for kidney stones, but the proof is in the pudding when you see different flax come out. And so then there's also frequencies to continue to break those down and to make your your kidney function better so that those don't happen again, or they happen less, or they're minimized, however that you'd like to say that. So I think there is a distinct possibility that, that changes do happen.
Yeah. Okay. And then if someone, if I just have this in my proverbial first aid kit, and someone has a headache or something, maybe headaches are a difficult example because there's so many different causes of headaches. There's a ton of them. But if they have a different issue and I let them use it to see if it helps, should they go through the whole first wave protocol, or can they go straight into the program that's going to address what it is that they're dealing with?
Yes, I would, in that instance, and you have just a short time to let that person use it, I would definitely go right to head tension is what we called it, because we didn't have a double-blind study, so head tension. And actually, you mentioned there are so many things that cause that cause headaches, and that's what's built into that frequency set. Did you know that parasites can cause headaches? So there's a frequency that's, inside there that it was Rife. Make sure I get the right inventor here. Rife actually had labeled headaches from parasites. So that's in there. Headaches from hormones is in there. And a variety of different things. There's 8 different ideas that are known to cause headaches. So those are all in that folder. So that when you play head tension, you're covering all of the bases that we could come up with, that we could find.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's nice to not have to pinpoint which of the 8 or so types of headaches are there. You just push the one track and it handles all of them. And I'm guessing that same concept applies to the other programs as well. I don't know which one for overall cognition, because there's cognitive wellness, which I'm actually running right now, and there's a couple other brain support and related sets, I think they're called. How do you go about choosing them? I know you have a frequency finder on your webpage that helps translate to what it's called to the use cases.
That's kind of a harder one to answer because, on our, I guess you were saying our mind, sometimes we don't know exactly what we're needing for our mind or brain, unless you have a concussion, that's labeled, athletic brain support is for concussion. But if you're looking at some of the other brain ideas, brain support versus cognitive wellness, it's kind of hard to know which one you might need. So in that instance, I suggest muscle testing. Are you a muscle tester?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I just tell people and I try to teach people. I'm a finger snapper. That's my muscle testing technique. When they come to my office to start with, to introduce them to the concept, I teach them a stand and sway concept
Yes.
because that's the easiest one. But then as you get into it, I could just snap my fingers and tell you which idea I think would be the best for you, you know. And if you can't narrow it down that way, you might have to play a couple of them, you know, and kind of pay attention to say, oh, this, you know, this did go away. But our head it's kind of hard to know when something improves in our brain a little bit. You know, I play recall boost myself. Sometimes my name recall isn't what I want it to be, and I'll play that. I can't tell if it helped or not, you know, but I'm going through the bases and trying it. But what I do have is testimonies. We had a week on our Zoom calls where we encourage people to share the WavWatch, like you asked, you know, kind of with the headache. And a lady shared her WavWatch with her neighbor when she went on a trip. The neighbor got the WavWatch, and she'd had a stroke, and she'd gone through everything that the medical community, you know, told her to do and everything. And she was still, you know, having trouble. You know, one half of her body was incorrect. And after 2.5 days on the WavWatch, when the neighbor got back, the lady could lift her hand above her head. She could unfurl her hand. She'd not been able to unfurl that. She could walk better. Her language was a little bit better. It has improved since then, but that wasn't a huge thing. But then mostly when she slept at night, her urinary tract, you know, was better, and she didn't have to get up to go to the bathroom all the time, that kind of thing. So her family was so appreciative of that thing, actually the most. And I hadn't thought about that, you know, for stroke that much. I was more excited about the hands opening up, but that happened in 2.5 days, you know. So I think that's kind of interesting that things do happen that we can't even begin to fathom in the speed that it does happen, when she'd spent a year and a half doing everything medical.
Well, you have a lot of cool programs on here, and you have a bunch of different categories. We didn't even get into some of them because there's so much energy and intention you put into creating these for different use cases and goals. Is there any for longevity or like anti-aging purposes where it's perhaps combining a couple different things all into one?
I think that's where the first wave comes in, because we are letting ourselves get so overtaken with it's not we are letting, we just don't know that those things are bothering our body. So we are having more and more aging very quickly because we have Lyme disease that can cause 300 different diseases, because we're carrying parasites, because we are not detoxifying, because we have lots of inflammation. That's a huge word in the medical community today. Inflammation. So when you run that folder, that's what I call the anti-aging folder. I don't have anything at this point in time that's specifically labeled anti-aging. It hasn't been measured as far as I could tell.
We'll start to wind down. I guess one thing we haven't covered yet is what is the difference between this technology and PEMF? Because I've talked about PEMF in a couple different episodes, and from what I understand, they are different technologies.
Yes. Now, I'm not an expert at PEMF, which I believe is more electrical. That's what so again, this is not electrical, this is vibrational. So everything has a vibration, law of the universe. And there's, again, 70 receptors in every cell that start to vibrate when they feel, vibration. And then that zips through your body. So that's how it works differently. But another thing I can say is that they were able to measure specific vibrations for specific problems. So it's very targeted. I don't know if PEMF is targeted.
A lot less. Is there any harm in combining the two, or like using them at different times throughout the day?
Right. Alternating them. Yes. And my husband and I have all these kind of tools and things too, so you want to alternate, but still, it's kind of we're trying not to be too over the top, but we keep saying, wow, this really still is the easiest thing to use, Like my husband hurt his neck the other day. He used almost everything. He didn't get the WavWatch to work. He went to the chiropractor, and nothing seemed to work. It was just a little bit of time, that took some of those things away. So he tried everything, so again, I can't say that everything works 100% of the time. Nothing does, but if you have a couple different tools, feel free to use them and rotate them around. And then,
Beautiful.
This one's one you can wear, so you can take it with you,
Yes. Perfect. Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. If people want to check out your work, your website, how do they find you?
So our website is just wavewatch.com or buy.wavewatch.com, either way.
To be clear, wave spelled with no E, just W-A-V.
And it stands for waves and vibrations, so maybe that'll help you clue that in, but wavewatch.com. And that makes it very, very easy. And I think you have a discount code, and that is just Urban. URBAN. So you can put that in as a discount code, or you can type in wavewatch.com/urban, and that will also get you $100 discount. So that's worth your remembering Urban and putting it in there, saving you some money.
And the link to the website, everything we discussed, will be in the show notes for this episode. If people have made it this far, Linda, what is your final takeaway for them?
I just think people need to learn about frequencies. We're silly if we don't think that our ancestors and that our ancient cultures knew a lot. And sometimes I think they knew a lot more than we know now. They learned it differently, and they knew how to harness different kinds of frequencies. And I'm seeing more and more that frequencies can put out fire. It's just amazing, some of the things that they are now realizing that frequencies can do. They can move things. They can, lift you up. It's just amazing. So we need to open our eyes to frequencies and their usage.
Perfect. Well, if people want to explore that topic, you've mentioned Royal Rife. You've also mentioned Nikola Tesla several times. Any other people or resources in that realm that you think are good to look into?
Well, if you have kids, just go to YouTube and type in crazy sound experiments. I believe it's 8 crazy sound experiments, and you'll see pictures of frequencies putting out fire. I've been actually able to levitate a rock off of my table using a sound frequency that I learned about in this 8th grade science experiment. So start sharing information about frequencies.
How cool. Linda, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a blast chatting with you.
It has really been fun.
All right. Until next time, be an outlier. Thanks for tuning in to High Performance Longevity. If you got value today, the best way to support the show is to leave a review or share it with someone who's ready to upgrade their health span. You can find all the episodes, show notes, and resources mentioned at outlier.com. Until next time, stay energized, stay bioharmonized, and be an outlier.